Good morning, everyone, and welcome to another Triangular Talk session. My name is Shreya Kalyan, and I'm the CEO of Agora Math Circle. Triangular Talks is a forum for students to interact with and hear directly from industry executives across various companies and organizations about how they use STEM concepts and problem-solving skills in their day-to-day work lives. Triangular Talks will be a series of 1-hour online Zoom sessions consisting of 3 parts: an introduction, a presentation, and a Q&A session. These talks will revolve around one central idea, the triangular method for solving problems. This method begins with the problem. From that, one gets innovation, which one will finally use to solve the problem. To help students connect the dots between classes and real life, speakers will be asked what they do every day and how they apply their knowledge of STEM and problem solving. This will introduce students to different industries and motivate them to nurture their problem-solving skills and not give up. The most common questions asked by students in any math class are, why are we learning this? Or when will we ever use this? This program will answer these questions and encourage students to take the initiative to learn and do more. Today, we are joined by Holly Maudsley. Holly has a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering from SD School of Mines and Technology and has 25 years of experience at 3M, spanning 5 divisions in 6 locations. She's contributed manufacturing technical expertise to improve myriad of products across these sites and divisions while traveling her leadership journey with 3M. I'm sure most of you, especially the middle schoolers, have started to notice a change in your sleeping habits. You're getting more homework and joining more extracurriculars, and this results in a later bedtime. There's been legislation passed to address this change, such as California's law to require high school to start no earlier than 8:30. That being said, sleep is essential to our productivity and well-being. Today, Holly will be discussing the importance of sleep and her recent research on the topic. After the talk, we have a feedback form for you guys to fill out so we can see what you thought about today's talk. Holly, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Syria. Great introduction. I'm super excited to be here with you today. I will go ahead and talk a little bit about myself and my background, and then present the information that I have. And I'm open for questions at the end afterwards. And I hope that you have lots of great questions. So I'll just start presenting, and then if you can let me know when you can see this in presentation mode, that would be great. Is it showing up for you?
I don't see it yet.
Okay, let me click one more button here. Oh, here we go. Okay. Yes, there we go. That should be working, right?
There we go. Yes, I see it now.
Perfect. Okay, good deal. All right. I use other methods and they all have slightly different buttons to click. So here we go. So today's talk will be sleep, your competitive advantage. So this next slide here, yes, it's a little bit busy, but I wanted to just kind of put everything. This is something that I had put together for another event. So I'll just talk through this a little bit. This is my career, and there's a lot of stuff going on here. So you heard her mention 25 years. That's a long time, and I know that's longer than most of you have been alive. So I've been around to a lot of different locations, been working on a lot of different things. It's been a really great career, and I have many more years to go. So the majority of that time has been with 3M, and I did work somewhere else a couple years before starting 3M, but we'll just focus on the 3M part of it. So also, as you heard, my degree is in chemical engineering. I have a bachelor's degree that I got from the South Dakota School of Mines and Technology. And I always knew I would be an engineer. I just didn't know what kind of engineer I would be until high school. My high school chemistry teacher was amazing and really showed me just the fun and joy and excitement with chemistry. And so that's what led me to chemical engineering. And I selected engineering. I knew engineering because I didn't want to be like a lab person mixing chemicals on the benchtop. I wanted to take that information and translate it to something that would be really useful for society at large. And I would say for the most of my career, I was working on manufacturing, but now the role that I'm in right now at a pilot plant, it's really come full circle, and I'm doing that, which I thought about way back in the beginning. So I do work in St. Paul, Minnesota. We do have snow. It's not snowing quite yet, but we like snow. I lived in California for 8 years, but I miss the seasons. There's really something about that. And so we will soon start getting snow, and that's really fun. Let's see. So I graduated in 1995, last century, and then started with 3M in 1997. And so I tried to just highlight the different. This is showing my career progression, kind of up the ladder. And you can see that there's a lot of lateral moves where I say stay in the same job grade, but change locations or change responsibilities. And that's normal to do in a career. It's not necessarily just a straight line up. But then you can also see that I have several different moves involved. So I started with 3M in Minnesota. I did move out to California. I was in Northridge, California for 8 years, and then I moved back to Minnesota, to a different town or a different city. And then I did just live in Iowa for 2.5 years recently, and now I'm back in Minnesota. So those moves allowed me to try different things or different industries. And then you can see the list on the right are all of those different positions that I was in. And some of the products that I've worked on, well, first I worked in an ethanol plant back before ethanol was really cool, like it is now. Then I was when I started, I was working on rubber injection molding, and this was in the power industry. So when they have to fix power lines, and especially underground power lines, and they cut the wires, then they have to put them back together. They would do that with a rubber splice. And so we made those splices, and I was the engineer for the line, and I had lots of great projects there. And then when I moved out to Northridge, I changed the industries completely. So then I was in drug delivery systems division. So I was working on transdermal patches. And I don't know if you've seen anyone with a patch or you know about it. There's some different ones out there. We worked on a nitroglycerin patch, which was used for heart patients. So I was the mixing and coating engineer. And that was a fantastic opportunity to work on consistency. So in manufacturing, you want to make sure that you're making the same thing over and over again without deviations. And it's when there's those problems that come up that you have to investigate and figure out what happened or what went wrong. And so I had that area that I was responsible for. And then I had a great chance to move to Minnesota, doing that same work, but now doing research and development. And that was also incredibly fun because now, instead of manufacturing the same thing over and over again, now I was able to experiment with new things and work with new customers and try to figure out the best run conditions, what line speeds or oven temperatures, and how to test it, and how to make that process really consistent. So that was a lot of fun. And then I moved from there to another product line, which we call ACCR, or aluminum composite ceramic reinforced, but it's overhead power lines. And right now they have the normal one that you see out there has steel on the inside and then aluminum on the outside. And that's a balance of strength and weight. And so the product that we had was a ceramic fiber, which was half the weight of steel, but the same strength. So you could have bigger power lines, but not, but have the same poles, like the same uprights for strength there. And that was really good. And I got to travel to customers or to our external vendor and work with them to do the final steps of manufacturing there. So most of my career has been product engineering and process engineering with some quality engineering in there, and then manufacturing technology engineering and R&D. So all of that was really good. And I was just chugging away great on that career. And then I got a leadership opportunity, and I went to Iowa now for making industrial tape. So this is like, boxes, and they seal the boxes with sealing tape. That's, one kind of one that you might know about, but there's a lot of tape that's made that keeps components together in your car, like in your dash or your seat, or different parts of your car, or the mirrors. And they need to bond to different things like foam and molded plastic, and trying to get a tape that will adhere those two surfaces together is challenging. So I did a Lean Six Sigma black belt position there. So I was like running higher level projects of trying to get after kind of those long-term or those insidious problems. And also I worked there on a warehouse flow project, when you have a lot of material, but you're not able to access it, or you have too much of the wrong thing and not enough of the thing that you need, that it causes problems. So I worked on some projects like that. Again, fantastic opportunity. And then I came back to St. Paul, and now I work in abrasives division. So one of 3M's oldest products is sandpaper. And so I basically work on sandpaper, but there's lots of different types and lots of different ways that we make it, and then it's used out in industry. They use it for paint repair on cars, so when they make brand new cars and trying to get the paint just right, or on medical, like new hips or knees, they're like polishing those. It has to be incredibly precise. So working on different abrasives that can polish those components. And then some things like, keeping the floors really shiny at some of the places that you shop. So lots of different ways that we use abrasives out in industry. And so I am very excited I get to run the pilot plant. So we have product developers that are working on new products, and then we have the manufacturing plants which make the stuff over and over again consistently. And I have that middle role of taking it from experimental to something that's manufacturable continuously, and working on the pilot plant. So I love it. It's amazing. And I have people that report to me now, and I really enjoy that part of it, as working with those other people. So like I said, there's a lot on this slide, but that's a lot of time in 25 years to have a really great career. And all of this as an engineer has been fantastic. But that's not all of me. I also have a lot of fun. So I have a son. He is 16 now. He's almost 17 next month. And we like to travel. We travel a lot, all over. We like to be outside. We like to be doing fun stuff. Now in Minnesota, because it's only nice like 4 or 5 months a year, we do all our camping in the summer. We go out. We're out doing a bunch of stuff. We're also out in the winter, but doing skiing and other type of cold winter activities. But we like to travel overseas. He's on his 3rd passport already, so that they only last for 5 years when you're a minor. But we like to go places. This is us at the Colosseum in Italy a few years ago. We also have in the lower right, lower left, sorry, is a corn pit. So we have a lot of fall festivals that are amazingly fun, and it's fun to climb around in the corn pit. So we take the same photo every year, and then I have a collage of photos. We also like to do cruises. So Disney Cruise Line is our favorite one. And so we just got back from a cruise to Alaska, which was really good. And then I teach his robotics team, which is in the top. This is from middle school when we had Lego robotics, but now he's got the first robotics here in high school. So that's awesome. And then I also ride a motorcycle. So just one more thing to throw in some fun. So that's just a little bit about me. So now I'll get into the topic of the day. So sleep. So sleep is your competitive advantage. And so I'll talk a little bit about why I have this topic and why it's kind of this particular theme on the presentation. So I'm also involved quite a bit in the Society of Women Engineers, and they have some high school options as well called SWE Next. And so if you guys want to talk about SWE Next, I'm happy to talk about that as well. And maybe you already know about it, or maybe you already have opportunities involved where you are. But SWE, Society of Women Engineers, is a fantastic organization. It was started in the 1950s, for some remote women engineers to have an opportunity for networking because it was so uncommon. And even when I became an engineer, it was less common, but getting better. And now, like, especially 3M tries really hard. A lot of companies try really hard to have equal or very representative with different diversity and gender and other types. So it's definitely different than it was in the 1950s, but the organization is fantastic for getting together with like-minded people. And every year they have an annual conference. And so I like to present at the conferences. And this year I had two talks that were selected. And one of them was about sleep, which is where I put a lot of this information together. But the reason that I became interested in this topic, I read this book called Why We Sleep. And I highly, highly, highly recommend it for anyone. My high school son read it. He was able, it's nonfiction, but he was able to read it just fine. So I think it would be all right for this audience. But there's also a TED Talk, basically the same information, just summarized in a different format, called Want to Live Longer, Get More Sleep. And this was presented by the same person, Matthew Walker. And it just so happened, I read the book and my colleague watched the TED Talk separately. And when we met up and we saw each other, we were raving to each other. Oh, I saw this great topic and it's really wonderful and amazing. And we should present this at the next SWE conference and for me, I thought there's so much information in here. I wish I would have known this when I was younger. And so I wanted to take the opportunity to share it with as many people as I could. At that conference, there's a lot of new college graduates. And so I thought this would be great to impact them for their life, for the rest of their life. And for this audience is even younger. And so you have even more opportunity to take to heart some of the concepts and apply them in your life. So that's where this topic came from, why I'm so excited and so passionate about it, and why we're presenting to you today. And so in the course of Triangle Talks, what is the problem? So the problem is excelling in school and in life. Like how do we do that? How can we do that? How can we, are there any secret tricks or ways or extra things that we can do to enhance that? And so when I was putting this content together, and to answer that original question is research. So I did a lot of research. So this book kicked it off, but there's a lot of other research out there. And for everything I talked about today, there's just infinite amount of information available. So I just have put it all together in something that is able to be gone through in a reasonable amount of time. So I'll just kick right in there. So what is sleep? First of all, it's good to understand like what is sleep. So I know that you go to bed at night and you wake up in the morning and maybe that's all there is, but that's not. There's a lot more to it, and it's been studied quite in length. So there's three different phases of sleep. So one is REM sleep, which is when you have rapid eye movement and your brain is very active and your eyes are very active, and there's a lot going on there. And then there's non-REM sleep, and there's a light phase and a deep phase, so like a deep sleep. And there's different things that are happening at each of those phases. So during non-REM sleep, that's where your body is really repairing and fixing and taking care of all of the things that have gone on during the day. And during REM sleep is where a lot of the brain activity is going on, where your brain is taking things that you've learned that day and putting it into memory. And it's also where you have dreams, like a lot of vivid dreams. And I don't know how many people, if we had an opportunity for a interactive, I would ask you how many people have vivid dreams, but that's all happening during REM sleep. So there's different phases of sleep. And so this is, there's a couple different ways of looking at it. So there's cycles. There's cycles that you go through as you're sleeping. And so it's pretty typical about a 90-minute cycle where you start from like a wakefulness attention, and then you go into like a REM phase. So you actually go from wakefulness to REM phase right away. Then you get into that deeper sleep. And in the beginning of the night, so on the right hand side, in the beginning of the night, you're spending more time in that deep sleep. And you're cycling through REM sleep, but you're spending more of the time in the deep sleep. And then as you sleep longer, the later part of that sleep cycle, the sleep period, is spent in the REM phase, or the REM stage of sleep. So you can see why it's important to sleep a long time altogether. During the deep sleep, or the early part of the sleeping time, is spent working on physical things, but then later in that sleep, it's working on more mental things. So there's benefits or different things going on throughout the course of the time that you're asleep. So looking a little bit at the history of sleep, it hasn't always been this way. So in the medieval times, there was something called biphasic sleep. And this was very normal, where people would go to sleep when the sun went down. And they would sleep for a few hours and then wake up in the middle of the night and kind of just lay there with whoever was around. And sometimes just a spouse, or sometimes the whole family would be sleeping in close quarters. And during this time, people would just lay together and talk or chat, or sometimes even people would get up and do some chores around the house. And then people would fall back asleep and wake up when the sun came up. And so there were kind of two distinct phases of sleep. And this was written about in lots of different locations around the world. So we know that this was very normal, biologic, and not just in one area. But it all changed with the invention of the light bulb. So this was an opportunity for people to stay up later with artificial light, and then also to get up in the morning before the sun came up, and when it was still dark outside. And this really compressed that sleep into the monophasic sleep that we know today. So now we'll talk a little bit about the impacts of sleep. So we'll start with mental health. And so the mental health is really important to get enough sleep to really let your brain regenerate and stay healthy. Because what can happen if there's a lack of sleep? It's like, so the recommendation is to get 7 to 9 hours of sleep a night. So if you're getting under that amount of sleep, and I would say too, for like younger people, that the recommendation is actually 8 to 10 hours of sleep. So if you're getting under that amount of sleep, you know, like maybe it happens once in a while. The next day you're kind of crabby and irritable, and things are just kind of not going so well. And maybe you're not able to focus, or you don't have enough energy to do the things that you normally would do. So that is noticed and noticeable. But if it happens like day after day, or a couple days in a row, that it can kind of cycle into itself and make it worse. And what can happen is, if people start to have like anxiety or stress about not getting enough sleep, or not sleeping well, or not falling asleep, and so maybe you go to bed and you're laying there like, okay, go to sleep, go to sleep, go to sleep, and then there's some anxiety, and so then it just kind of becomes a cycle where, if you stress about sleep and then you're not able to get enough sleep, and then you're stressed and whatnot. And so it's really important for mental health to have enough sleep consistently, day after day, to have that. So sleep really does improve your emotional resilience. So, during the day, there's all kinds of things that happen with people saying things, or a missed assignment, or you forgot something at home, and just the ability to withstand kind of that normal day-to-day impact. It's so much easier with being fully rested and being able to withstand that. So now let's talk a little bit about memory. And so this is really important for this audience specifically, is that, sleep does change during adolescence, and, younger people need more sleep, that 8 to 10 hours. But then like during high school time or during the teenage years, and it can be earlier or later for some people, but the body clock starts to shift a little bit later, where just naturally there's a tendency to stay awake a little bit later and wanting to sleep in more in the morning. And so instead of like maybe before it was easy to get up at 6 a.m. or 5:30 or something like that, now it's really hard even to get up at 7. So that's a normal thing that's been measured with adolescents. And so there's a couple things going on in this graphic here, but this natural change in the body makes it harder to go to sleep. Like it's harder to turn your brain off and turn your body off and go to sleep. But then also, kids are getting where they're doing their own thing at night. They're responsible for getting themselves to bed, for the nighttime routine, and turning off the light, setting the alarm clock, and all of that kind of normal, pajamas and toothbrush and whatever else. But then also there's more homework, and there's more requests on time to get all this stuff done. And, diligent kids really want to get everything done to the nth degree. And then even on top of that is social pressure, social networking, and screen time. And that's even more so now than ever before. And all of this leads to a harder time to really secure that full night of sleep. So one thing that some places have done is study this, and if they're able to shift the high school start time later, like my son, his starts at 8:30, and I heard that mentioned in the intro, that has been shown to have a good increase in test scores, because it allows teens to have that more full night's sleep. So versus like the elementary school start 7:55, some of them, or I'm not sure where they are in your area, but a little bit earlier. So and for all this memory and learning, it's really important during REM sleep. That's where the brain is really active. So looking at this one, this is another study that I came across. So this is looking at the amount of sleep, and these are college students. So this is relatable to high school. But this particular study was done in college. But looking at what the score is compared to the amount of sleep that people get, this is, you can see that there's a strong correlation, or good correlation there, positively. So the more sleep overall, the better the scores typically are. And then the bottom graph, which is interesting, this is looking at standard deviation. So this is how consistent, like night after night after night. So rather than like if you sleep 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours, 8 hours, it's better than if you sleep 6, 6, 6, 6, and 14. That would be the same average, but your standard deviation is quite a bit. Or if it's 6 hours, 7 hours, 4 hours, 10 hours, the variation. Also, having a lower variation leads to higher test scores also. So that it just shows the really consistent sleep time and sleep quality, how impactful that is on test scores. So, and then this is, I think, related to the same study, but they also looked at, is it important just to get a good night's sleep the night before the test? And what they found is that just looking at the night before the test doesn't show a correlation with the midterms that they were studying in this one. And same thing for the midterms or the quizzes. So if you just only look at how much sleep did you get the night before, there's not a strong correlation. But if you look at the week and month leading up to the quizzes or midterms in this case, so you take that aggregate, again, the consistency, that's what showed a really positive correlation on a higher score on those midterms. And it was a little bit less pronounced on the quizzes, but it was definitely strongly related for the midterms. Okay, and now this is talking a little bit about like older population. So I'll deviate, around a little bit there too. But looking at, so memory and learning is not only important for young people and teenagers and college and that sort of thing, but also it's really important in our elderly. I mean, it's important for everyone. But some of the studies, a lot of the studies that have been done, and so this is really looking at Alzheimer's and then like stroke victims or other brain injuries types, and the ability to do some tasks that were requested in this study, and how it's related to sleep. So there were two different groups. One, they had to learn some information, and then some people got to go to sleep, and then later they tested on it, and then other people had to stay awake and then be tested on it. And I mean, it's not extreme, but is it better to sleep and let it sink in, or is it better to try to stay awake and just keep learning it? And so this is also critical, which I didn't mention on the previous slide, but if you are trying to study for a test, like say you have a test the next day, it is more important that you have a full night's sleep than to stay up late and study and not get a full night's sleep. So that's the evidence shows that again and again. So in this case, for the elderly patients, looking at sleep also positively impacts that. And there's different ways that your brain functions, whether you're on the younger side or the older side. It does show that older people have a higher tendency to wake up in the middle of the night or to wake up in the night. And so getting back to sleep or that sleep disruption. So there's two different things that they also have studied is this declarative memory and non-declarative memory. So the declarative memory is like learning facts and figures, learning from a book or studying or classroom type of things, or learning like numbers or that sort of thing. And that is transferred into the hippocampus and the neocortex in the brain. But the non-declarative memory is also really important. That's like things like riding a bike or the pathway home, or understanding how to respond to plants or animals, some of the like more muscle memory kind of things. But both of these are impacted by getting enough sleep. Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about disease. So it's really important to fight off colds or diseases by getting enough rest. So a couple of tests that have been done or studies that have been done is around like the flu vaccine. That's kind of, it's been around for a while. And if you have enough sleep, if you've been getting enough sleep beforehand, the flu vaccine will be very effective. But if you are not getting enough sleep and you get the vaccine, it won't take as well. It won't be as effective as if someone that has slept more. So if you get enough sleep, what this graphic in the middle shows is that if you get enough sleep, you have 4.5 times higher odds of escaping illness than someone that has slept 5 hours or less. So they've done the similar tests for the flu, for hepatitis A and B, vaccines in particular, and then just studying the common cold as well. So the immune system is boosted by getting enough regular sleep. So a couple other interesting things that have been found in the literature is around that sleep. And I'll focus on the middle a little bit, but there's evidence out there, and it's easily studyable, looking at the number of heart attacks that people have. So day to day, there's just kind of a consistent number of heart attacks that are happening. You can track it, how many people go to the hospital for a heart attack. And, we have daylight savings time. We just had the fall back. Everyone got an extra hour of sleep, which was really great. And what that shows is in the fall, when we get that extra hour of sleep, that there's a reduction in heart attacks, 21% reduction. And in the spring, when we lose an hour of sleep, or we have to set our clocks ahead and we lose that hour, there's a 24% increase in the amount of heart attacks that are experienced. So that's, just one more data point there. But also there's been studies done for cancer with mice tumors, and in this particular case, they were looking at bowel cancer, prostate cancer, and breast cancer, and looking at the amount of sleep that the mice were allowed to have, and then measuring how the cancers grew. And so that same thing shows there is that the mice that were able to get enough sleep had less cancer growth than the ones that didn't. So, and then the graphic on the right shows that the sleep impacts nearly everything in your body. So mental health, which we talked about, immunization or immunodeficiency, cardiovascular, diabetes, obesity, hormones, and your ability to withstand pain. So it affects everything in your body. So we'll talk about driving, and I don't know how many of you are driving yet, but this is really important. So when you're starting to drive, so my son's been driving for about 8 months now, and like I said, I had him read this book, so he knows this information. But what they've shown in studies is that if you don't get enough sleep, it's just like driving drunk or driving impaired, and that's how critical it is. And so, we hear a lot about don't drive while intoxicated, but also don't drive while tired. So there's things that have been done out there to try to limit that. There are some educational activities, but then changes of behavior, like not driving tired, and changes to the environment. Some of the things like the rumble strips in the middle of the road or on the side of the road, that can help with if you're driving and you start to drift. But then also, a lot of the newer cars have technology built in that if they sense like either swerving, gentle drifting, like if somebody's falling asleep, that the steering wheel will alert you to say like, it notices that you're drifting. And then also some will alarm and say, maybe it's time for a break, and pull over or get a cup of coffee. So some things to think about is that don't drive while tired. Make sure you're getting enough sleep. Have somebody else drive if needed, or if it comes to it, just pull over and take a nap on the side of the road, or pull off on an exit or at the rest stop or the gas station, and take a nap is better than driving while tired. So now we'll talk about physical performance. We've talked a lot about mental or brain impact. So now physically on your body, if you're not getting enough sleep, the ability to do some of that physical activity is very impacted. So your reflexes are slower, you're more likely to feel pain. So just the normal part of playing, that you're more sensitive to things like temperatures even. And then it's harder to pay attention, and it's easier to make mistakes. So especially when you're trying to take instruction from the coach or your teammates, that it's harder to focus and execute as intended if you don't have enough sleep. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting, Tom Brady, who's a famous quarterback, said that his number one thing that he does is get enough sleep. He's very religious about it. After a big celebration or a big win, a lot of the team likes to go out and celebrate. And he said he never goes along. He goes home and he goes to bed. And that's why he always succeeds like he does, is because he protects his sleep time. So the quote here is, "Proper sleep has helped me get to where I am today as an athlete. And it's something that I continue to rely on every day." So he has a new biography out, autobiography, and he talks about this quite a bit in there. So if you don't get enough sleep, can you just make it up on the weekend? That's, a common thought or a common question. And you will have a sleep debt that will continue to grow if you don't get enough sleep, like day on day, day after day, that at some point you can't ignore it anymore. You have to sleep. You have to get that sleep. But it's better performing for all of these different things we've talked about if you really try to be consistent day after day, even so much as, you get 8 hours of sleep during the week. And even still on the weekend, still go to bed at the same time and wake up at the same time. If you can, fight the urge to sleep in on the weekend and really maintain kind of that sleep consistency is the best for everything. So there's different strategies. If you're having a hard time or you're wanting to work on this, you can keep a sleep diary and just write down what time you go to bed every night and what time you wake up in the morning. And so you can see how much sleep you're getting. And if you're really struggling or you didn't get enough sleep the night before, it is okay to take a nap to kind of make up that time. And sometimes trying to build habits or change habits, it takes a little bit for it to become really effective. If you're struggling, night after night, not getting enough sleep, not being able to go to sleep early enough, or having a hard time falling asleep, that's persistent. It is good to talk to your parents or talk to a doctor if needed. At the bottom here, it talks a little bit about, now this is for elderly patients that they've tried some things. Sometimes older people have a hard time falling asleep, just their brain isn't as active as it used to be, or they don't have as many physical demands as when, for young people. And so they've tried some things like this direct current brain stimulation to try to get people to fall asleep. And it's been effective, and it's shown a positive impact on Alzheimer's patients. So now we'll talk a little bit about nutrition. So in the case of nutrition, what you put into your body is affected both ways. If you don't get enough sleep, you eat the wrong food. And if you eat the wrong food, you don't get enough sleep. So, and conversely, if you eat the right foods and fuel your body well and fuel your brain well, you will sleep better. And if you get enough sleep, you will tend to make better choices about the food that you eat. And so specifically around vitamins, and they've studied these ones: vitamin A, vitamin C, vitamin D, vitamin E, and K. And then the B vitamins, they regulate melatonin. So melatonin is one of the things that creates that natural sleep cycle, that natural sleep craving. And then also magnesium and calcium. So those impact your body's ability to want to sleep well. But if you eat a lot of like carbohydrates or high sugar or energy drinks, especially later in the day, that will negatively impact your ability to fall asleep well and to sleep well. And also, if you're tired and you're trying to stay up late and cram for a test, then you will have a tendency to snack on junk food, and because you're not able to make really good decisions. And so that'll even worse impact your sleep. So so one of the things on the third one, eating foods high in serotonin is good, and that's can be found in kiwis. So maybe kiwis could be good added to your evening snack. But generally, the tip is to not eat 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. So caffeine. Now, I don't know about you guys, if you drink coffee or drink soda, soda with caffeine in it, that there's an impact there with sleep. And so caffeine has a longer time in your body than you might realize. So 3 hours before after drinking caffeine, and even 6 hours after drinking caffeine, it's still in your body, and it's still impacting things that are going on in your body. So it says 6 hours after consuming a caffeinated beverage, half of the caffeine is still present in your body. And if you are drinking soda or pop, I forget what you call it in California, but I think soda, that it'll still be in your body when you go to bed, and that will disrupt your body's natural ability to fall asleep. So cut off your caffeine intake after 2 p.m. Okay, now screens. So screens is a whole nother ball game. So one thing is that the screens put off blue light. And so I know that there are some things like blue light blockers for glasses, or on your smartphone, you can turn off put on comfort light. So that's one thing. But even the lights around, artificial light impacts your body's calling to fall asleep. So that's why you want to turn the lights down. to turn off the sharp lights overhead and to turn off your screens. And that's, your personal devices as well as TVs or other, work computers or school computers, because it just it interferes with your body's ability to want to fall asleep. So it's really important to cut out phones at night. And big tip there is to charge your phone not in your bedroom. So charge it in the kitchen or in the family room or somewhere away from where you're sleeping, and to turn that off or limit it an hour before bed. Okay, so in summary, so I'm sure you've heard over and over again that having that nice consistent bedtime or bed sleep routine with enough hours, so somewhere 7 to 10 hours of sleep a night consistently, is the best for so many things all over the place. So mental health and memory, physical health and performance. And so some tips really to summarize what I've talked about today is just really that nightly routine, getting into good practice, having a consistent bedtime, which is kind of annoying, except for it's so good for you. And it really does give you that competitive advantage when you're looking at test scores and school and excelling on all the things that you're trying to excel on. Don't drive while drowsy. Don't eat 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. Cut off your caffeine after 2, and limit your screen time an hour before bed. So a couple quotes here on Ariana Huffington: discover the great ideas that lie inside you by discovering the power of sleep. And John Steinbeck, famous author, it's a common experience that a problem difficult at night is resolved in the morning after the committee of sleep has worked on it. So with that, I'll stop there and I am open for any questions.
Thank you so much, Holly, for the wonderful talk. While we wait for the audience to maybe unmute and put some questions on chat, I can maybe get us started. So you made a comment earlier on saying, I wish I had known all of this before. I'm really curious to know what would you have done differently, I guess.
Sure.
Yeah.
A couple of things, because it was common in college that I would either, try to study all night, or like I wouldn't do my work until the night before, and then I would try to stay up late and finish it. Or we would sit at the restaurant and drink coffee all night long. They had bottomless coffee at Perkins, and try to just power through all this work. Or I would just not sleep during the week and then try to make it up on the weekend and not sleep till noon. And like, I thought that was okay. And, not knowing any better, not understanding any better, that really wasn't effective. So those are a couple of things, especially around studying or around, college and learning. The other thing that I did, which, I look back and I'm like, that was so stupid. But when I was first working, when I was a young adult and I had graduated college and I was first working, I would work a full day. And then I would drive 11 hours to go visit my parents. And I would arrive at like 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, and I would have to like take notos or drink coffee to try to stay awake. And like that was so stupid. And I put myself in a lot of dangerous situations, by making those choices because I didn't know any better. Those are just a couple of examples of things that health-wise, there are some things about fertility that I didn't talk on today, and that are also relevant, and the disease fighting and like immunizations and the common cold. Just a lot of those kinds of things. Like, it makes sense when you learn about it, but I didn't know that earlier. So those are just a couple examples.
Oh, thank you. A couple of questions have come through chat. Would you like to take them, Holly? I'm happy to read them out.
Sure.
To you, or
Yeah.
can you read them out yourself? Yeah.
Can you
sure.
Read them off here? Yeah.
What time should you try to go to sleep at, and what time should you try to wake up?
Yes. So it's going to be a little bit different for everyone. There are such a thing as like night owls and early birds, and that's a real thing. And so, another thing that I have come to appreciate being older or being, longer in my career, is that those are legit. Those are real things. And so don't try to fight it. Like, if you are naturally a night owl, you don't have to be an early bird to succeed. You don't have to be like other people. Same thing. If you're an early bird, you don't have to try to stay up as late as other people. And, if your sleep clock comes earlier, then acknowledge it and embrace it and go to bed, and then feel free to wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. So what the exact time that you go to bed and wake up is like personal preference, but the more important thing is to do it consistently. So that's where maybe a journal might help to kind of write it down. So like in my case, what I try to do here is so even my son, I say bedtime is 10 o'clock. 10 o'clock. So at 10 o'clock, we stop doing whatever we're doing and it's time to go to bed. Now, we might not be asleep by until 10:30 or maybe even 11. And so that's difficult, but the like in our mind, it's using that like 10 o'clock as a signal. And then my son, what he does is, he might fluctuate a little bit, but he always tries to get 8 hours of sleep. So if he goes to bed at 10, he can wake up at 6:30. But if he doesn't go to bed until 10:30 or 11, then he'll sleep until 7. So he's trying to get that 8 hours, really honor that 8-hour time frame. But it's more it's more the consistency that works for you.
Thank you. We have another question. How much time should you not work before sleeping?
Sure. So I'll take this a couple different ways. You can work, like, say if you're doing homework, you're working on your computer and you're working on a textbook and you're working on paper and you're sitting at a table doing work. That would be like, you can do work up until time to go to bed. One of the things I really like to do is to read in bed. And so I allow time there. So like, let's say that I'm in bed by 10 o'clock. I might read for half an hour and turn the light off at 10:30. And so I don't really consider that working. But like computers or on your phone, that screen time, you should try to limit that beforehand. So by the time you put that work down and then get your pajamas on and brush your teeth and maybe, feed the cat or whatever your other kind of nighttime routines are, we set up a humidifier and, we turn on our electric blankets because it's cold here. So like, that's part of our nightly routine is like, that little warmth and, so those, you'll settle down between screens and sleep. But so depending on what the work is, there's, again, it's more of just turning things off and letting your body do that natural decline into sleep on a consistent manner. Does that help?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And of course, the audience, please feel free to unmute and ask any follow-up questions that you may have for Holly. We'll probably give it another few seconds to see if the audience has any follow-up questions. I mean, I think between your learning, Holly, and your son's, now, we it's the age of screens and whatnot, things have evolved. As he has sort of transitioned into, you probably used to set his, as he transitions into young adulthood, right, where he's taking on responsibility for his own, bedtime and whatnot. What are some of the learnings for him? I'm curious about something that may be applicable for the audience as the times have evolved now, right?
Sure.
Anything that you can share, that would be super helpful.
Yeah, I did ask him just before we started here, and like what does he remember most from the book, and what does he try to do most? And what he said that really came across again and again is that consistency. The just having the same night after night, that is most impactful for all of these things. And then also to have that 8 hours of sleep a night. And that's what he really honors, is trying to make sure that whatever time he's going to bed, that he sets his alarm at least 8 hours later. So he sets his alarm. He's responsible for that. And then, you know, he can also recognize, like, if he's working, he's studying, he's doing homework, because he has a lot of homework, and, you know, he's doesn't really necessarily prioritize it completely well, but he'll recognize as he's trying to slog through whatever the assignment is that's due the next day, he'll say, I think I should just go to bed, and I'll get up and I'll finish this in the morning. So rather than trying to push through, like if he has, say he has 4 or 6 problems left on an assignment, and if he tries to push through, it might take another half hour, 40 minutes, 45 minutes, and, you know, and then it just gets slower and slower. And he'll recognize, he'll say, I'm just going to go to bed. And then I wake up, and then he gets up in the morning, he can do it in 10 minutes. And I've seen that again and again. So he can recognize that himself on how his body is feeling, and make those decisions. So I would say those are kind of the things that have come out the strongest.
Yeah, thank you. That is very helpful. And, you know, as I was listening to your talk, it's not just for, you know, students who are transitioning into young adulthood and, you know, and whatnot. It's for everybody, right? Even for adults, it's important to understand the importance of sleep. And, you know, you talked about how it has implications across the board, right? For, you know, optimal health, performance, absorbing information, responding, reacting, making good decisions. So the implications are across the board. And basically what I'm taking away is that there is a discipline that's involved, right? You might have so many reasons that you may want to stay awake, the immediate gratification of, oh, you know, one more video game, or one more episode that I want to watch, or whatever it might be. And it comes down to discipline, and especially for students here who are, you know, right now, who may be under parental guidance, meaning, you know, they say, parents might say, okay, you know, they enforce the sleep discipline, but as they transition into young adulthood, it's important to understand the why about the importance of sleep, and that can potentially help them stick to the habits when they really don't want to. So that was very, very helpful. Thank you so much. And I want to take a minute to acknowledge, you know, yourself, Holly, for taking the time to be here on a Saturday morning to share this important information with us. It was very engaging, and all of the research that went into it, and the way you sort of provided evidence for everything, which is great. And just in the spirit of this being, you know, a STEM talk, we saw some statistics and etc. This is super helpful to see all of those nuggets come together. And also want to acknowledge Lisa and Andrew, Shreya and Kalyan for all of the, you know, the offline sessions that they had with you in preparing for this talk. So thank you all. Again, appreciate the audience for showing up on a Saturday morning to hear this important information. Hopefully, you know, students can remember this when they actually feel, you know, maybe let's say they had a long night and they're like, no, I shouldn't do this, you know, I should try and do something different, right, in terms of getting better sleep. And they recognize and remember this as they go through the next phases of their life. Thank you so much, Holly. Appreciate your time. Yeah.
Very, very welcome. It was my pleasure to be here, and I'm very happy to share all this information with you. And I wish you all the best. And as our talk was originally titled, Sleep Well and Prosper.
Thank you. What a way to end. Thank you, everyone. Have a great weekend. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
you can email info@agoramathcircle.org or comment below and we'll reply back. Maybe. And if you want to see practice things or anything about us, you can visit our website, which is basically the end of the email but without the info and the end. So bye!